And as far as technological things, I always like to find out, like when I talk to the people in different countries, are there any like social media things or any just general cultural apps or websites that are really big in Japan that we might not know about over here?
So the big one that I've had to use a lot is Line. I'm not sure if people use it in the States. I'd never heard of it until I came to Japan, but it's basically just a way to where if you have different phones from different countries, you can still text, you can still talk, still video chat. And we use it a lot for work because the Japanese guys I work with don't have any kind of American numbers, obviously. Mm-hmm. So it's a good way to be able to text with them, chat with them, call them. So it works out pretty well.
Gotcha. And is that Line, Line?
Yep. Exactly as you think it would be.
Just like a phone line. Who would have thought?
That's something funny, actually, you mentioned that, because the Japanese are very straightforward. No matter what it is, they call it what it is. So, we say the U.S. tries to call, Operation something crazy, like Operation Overlord for D-Day. We like to come up with names. They'll literally call it Operation Earthquake Relief in Hokkaido. Very blunt and straightforward.
I mean, maybe they just like the key words. They just want to be right to it. They want everybody to search and be like, oh, we know what's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it earthquakes that are the biggest worry over there? Is it, to me, I also think of, the big tsunamis and things like that. Or what's the biggest natural disaster worry over on the island?
So earthquakes are the biggest, but tsunamis are usually associated with the earthquakes. If you look at the tectonic plates, the way they line up, a couple of them are just off the coast, basically, of Tokyo. So if there's a huge earthquake off in the ocean, that's going to cause a big tsunami. So it's when you go near the coastline, there's always tsunami evacuation signs that tell you, go this way. And Japan's such a weird country as well, because they also have volcanoes. I mean, Mount Fuji, which I've climbed, which is awesome, is an active volcano, and if that explodes, there's going to be all kinds of problems.
How long does that take? How tall is Mount Fuji?
Mount Fuji is, I think, was it 30, almost 3,800 meters, somewhere around there. I should probably look at my stick behind me, because that's one I climbed with, see if it has it on there. But, so it's a fairly tall. We went about 4 hours. We stayed the night because we were hoping to see the sunrise, but it ended up storming the rest of the day. So when we got up the next morning, we didn't get to see the sunrise, unfortunately.
And you mentioned mountainous volcanoes, I think big cities, flashy lights. What is the country predominantly? Is it more built up? Is it more rustic and jungly?
So it's where I'm at in the Kanto Plain area. So if you look at Tokyo, and then around the outskirts of Tokyo is the Kanagawa Prefecture, which is Yokohama, and Sagimahara, which is where I live. And then if you go beyond that, you start getting into the country. And it actually kind of looks, for where we are, it looks almost Midwestern. Like if you've driven around the Cincinnati area, like, it's nice and forested, but it's not quite jungly. The further south you get, it gets a little bit more jungly, but most of it is just city centers. It kind of reminds me of the U.S. like that. Like you get around Cincinnati, it's built up, and then you get in between Cincinnati and Columbus, there's nothing. And then Columbus is built up, and then between Columbus and Cleveland, there's nothing. So it kind of does the same thing going like Tokyo, Osaka, Hiroshima, different places like that. If you're not right in the city, it's pretty sparse.
And transportation-wise, what's the main? How do you get around?
So
when you're not doing do-si-dos on helicopters.
So I like to drive just because that's the American in me. I like to drive everywhere. Traffic is awful, absolutely awful. But most people use the trains. Like there's a train station probably like a 10-minute walk from us. So I mean, sometimes we'll take the train, but like I said, I like to drive. That's just me.
Do they have like the fast rails in Japan, or am I thinking somewhere else?
No, they do. They have a Shinkansen is what it's called. So if you're going like on a long trip from like Tokyo to Osaka or Tokyo to Sendai or somewhere like that, then you can get on those and it's almost a direct route, as opposed to the local train, which stops like every 2.5 to 3 minutes.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's almost as bad as sitting in bad traffic if you got to stop every 3 minutes.
And I mean, if you take a train at rush hour, prepared to be just sandwiched in. I mean, they're pushing people onto the trains to make sure that everybody can get on.
I've seen that online. They have like sticks and they like push people in there.
Oh, I mean, you can't move at all. So it's crazy.
And is that a cultural thing? I mean, like if that was me, I'd be freaking out. Like everybody there, they're just okay with it. Like as many people as we can get. Let's go.
Yeah, they don't worry about that in elevators. They don't worry about that on trains. They just like to pack in as much as they can. But like I said, everybody ignores each other. Nobody's talking. They just kind of quietly stand there. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, and they don't like smiling too. Isn't that true?
The older generation really doesn't. The younger people, it's funny, I got a lot of people tell me this is what Japan's like before you get there. The people are very strict and very stringent, but the younger generation is much more willing to express their emotions.
Charge. Gotta get some. I got the notification. I have no battery. Put the charger on. So you said that. What is that like though? Being that like the old cultures and the young cultures are so different. Being the tourist, you kind of just. What's people like? People watching like? Is it just a complete? How would you describe it?
Well, it's always funny because there's strange. Come from the U.S., being a white guy, no one looks at you, no one cares. But in Japan, I'm like a giant. I look different. So all the little kids, like when I go to a play area, always look at me like, "Who are you? What are?" Especially with the beard, because most Japanese guys don't have beards.
Right.
So they're just very confused by me. So I find it funny. And the older generations will usually not try to interact with you, but a lot of the younger people, especially since I have little kids and they have kids, we'll end up having conversations. And there's a lot of places you go, like we went to Tokyo Disney, and the people actually will come up to you because you speak English and they're trying to improve their English.
You become an ESL teacher while you're just trying to go and see
Exactly.
Mickey Mouse.
Exactly.
And you mentioned Mickey Mouse and Disneyland. What other American culture type things are big over there? Anything?
I'm trying to think. So one of the funniest things you'll see is on T-shirts and signs, they try to put them in English, but it looks like they used a Google Translate app because it never quite makes sense. Like I was in an Academy Sports store here, and I was looking in the basketball section, and the shirt said, "Love basketball, hug court." And I was like, no idea what you're trying to say there, but okay. There's lots of random things. They have McDonald's is a big thing here. Like they have them everywhere. Of course, McDonald's is everywhere in the world, so that's just a Japanese thing. But baseball is huge in Japan.
That makes sense. I mean, a lot of the really big guys, the real big stars in the Major League Baseball over in America, come from the Japan area. So is it a different, have you been to like a baseball game in Japan? Is it a different feel than going to like the Reds game or anything like that?
So I've not had a chance to go yet. I'm hoping to go to one in like a month. But it's from what I've watched on TV, it's just a different culture. American baseball is pretty laid back. Fans are pretty quiet for the most part, just enjoying the game. And Japanese baseball, they have cheering sections. So there's literally people, almost like a high school football game with like milk jugs and drums and just screaming and shouting the whole game. And it's just and they also play the players. It's a different way the players approach the game. They would rather just not bring shame is the whole thing they're worried about. So if they tie, they're okay with it. A tie is totally fine in Japanese baseball.
Gotcha. But a loss is they take that a little bit harder, maybe.
Oh yeah, like you said, if a pitcher hits the guy with the ball, he apologizes.
So there's no charge in the mound. What fun is that?
I know. If the fighting is very frowned upon, so it brings shame on everybody. So they don't want to do that.
What other sports are big in Japan?
Soccer is probably the next biggest sport. A lot of kids play soccer. It seems like they like to fast track. So once you play a sport, you kind of stick with that. So soccer is a big one. Baseball is big. Basketball, somewhat. Tennis is somewhat big. And golf is probably the other big one.
I don't think I would have picked golf. I think golf wouldn't even made my list of places I'm thinking of in Japan.
Yeah, they're really big into it. It's an individual sport. So they're able to, perfect it on their individual levels. So it's something that they're big into.
That makes sense. The whole honor thing comes in of the team of one. What about the stereotypical? Is any martial arts things real big over there? I see like the swords and everything everywhere. Are they putting them to use?
Well, I forgot. Sumo wrestling is a big thing. It's huge. They actually have big tournaments. We tried to get tickets to a sumo competition. It's very expensive to go. Mm-hmm. So sumo wrestling is big. Aikido, which is like a self-defense technique, is big. They like to do competitions with that. And other than that, I can't really think if they do any other. I bet there's probably more martial arts, but I'm not a very martial arts person, so I'm not 100% sure.
Right. So let's move more into when you're not trying to save Japan and doing crazy things in helicopters. Still in my mind, I'm thinking of you guys being on like a boat, just doing all sorts of crazy things. But let's move more into your writing. How long have you been an author? How long have you been writing, either amateur or professional?
So I've really been writing most of my life. I mean, in fourth grade, I don't know if Ohio does it like Kentucky, but we had to do portfolios. So you actually had to sit down and write like 5 different stories and edit them and perfect them and then turn them into the state and they'd grade you. So that
No,
was the first
we don't do
time.
anything like that. We just take stupid tests and that's it.
So that was probably the first time I really got into writing and then, just continued to do it through middle school and high school, but didn't take it too seriously. And it was actually during flight school when I was in the Army. I was sitting in a class, and this instructor was not a very nice guy. He's very boring and very dry. And an idea just popped into my head, which ended up becoming my first novel. And I started scribbling it down, probably for the whole hour and a half he was talking. And that ended up being my first novel, Once Left the Field of Valor, which just debuted on March 14th.
And what made you? Did it just kind of just flow naturally into a novel, or I mean, how did you decide to go full novel instead of maybe just make it a short story or things like that?
So with this being my first book, it was actually a really terrible process. I had never done it before, so it took years. Like literally, I think I finished the rough draft from 2012 to 2016, and then had to figure out how to get it edited. So I'm learning all the lessons, this first time around. So it kind of just kept reading on itself. Every time I'd finish a section, I was like, well, it's not done yet, and just kept building into 22 chapters.
Mm-hmm. And did you self-publish everything?
I did for this one, yes. It's really hard to get an agent if they don't know you're going to be successful, if they don't see you have a platform built up already.
Absolutely. And self-published, did you go through Amazon or how'd you do it?
I did. I went through Amazon. It was very simple. I hired an editor, which was actually one of my friend's wives who does book editing, and she did a great job. So got it edited. Then I just went in and did all the formatting. My boss actually did the cover art for it, which I got a copy right here in case the people have not seen the cover art. So he's an artist. He has an art degree. So he did a really good job with the cover art. So it looks really professional. And then, just got to put up on Amazon.
Absolutely. And I see that you have the hard copies. You're getting those printed through Amazon too, right?
Yes.
What was the turnaround time from the time that you put in the author copies and they showed up?
So for me to get them over here, it was about 2.5 weeks. But if you buy one in the States, it's 2 days.
Yeah, I was just wondering. I knew here it was like boom, boom, boom. I wasn't sure if, going overseas, if it kind of took maybe an extra day or two, or that's crazy, yeah. 2 weeks.
It's a little bit of a lag. It kind of cracks me up. My mom likes to send me newspaper articles, from the local newspapers. And I keep telling her if it's a sports article, I've probably already read it. It's 2 weeks old, but I've probably seen it by now.